Let's talk about archers in flight and archers in the fight. Hello everyone, I am Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie. Now today we're going to be talking about a theory that hasn't been explicitly stated by any historians or sources, but based on the information I've got, which do include primary sources, and I'll include links and things in the description, I have come up with a theory that there are two main types of archers. Now, when I say archers, I will mostly be talking about bowmen, people using bows, but it will very easily expand to include slingers, people using crossbows, people using javelins, and if you really sort of stretch the definition, you can potentially include people who use firearms up to and including the modern period. But that's where it starts to get more iffy, and I'm not an expert on those sorts of things. In fact, I'm not an expert at all. This is just from what I know, which hopefully shall be enlightening to you today. So the first type of the two archers that I'm talking about are skirmishing archers. Now when I talk about skirmishing archers, I'm talking about archers who are generally lightly armed and armoured, typically are expected to get into the battlefield, shoot where required and then get out, and also are known to be a bit flexible in the fact that they can perhaps go to areas like a frontal assault, they can go to the back, they can do, for example, in some examples you can see that you get the same skirmishing archers who will go in, shoot, retract, but then go back again in repeated assaults, whilst not expecting to receive any casualties themselves, ideally. One famous example of these would be the Mongols. Now, many of you will know, or perhaps some of you won't know, that the Mongols were typically consisting of cavalry, and famously they had archers on horseback. So they were expected to, again, go around, shoot at the enemy, perhaps even forming a shooting circle, to repeatedly bombard and pepper the enemy with arrows, and then if it looked like things were going to get troublesome, they could easily escape again. So if, for example, spearmen, swordsmen, people using a variety of weapons were trying to chase after them, they can't, and they would only be chased perhaps by cavalry. But of course, if you're someone who's fairly lightly armoured, on a horse that doesn't wear armour, and you're just shooting back and forth, and you're even being chased by heavy cavalry, who have, barding as in armour on the horses, wearing armour themselves, and generally heavily armed, you can typically expect that those sorts of horse archers would be able to get out of there. Now that isn't to say that all Mongols were archers, or to say that all of them didn't wear armour, but it's that general idea that people could end up using their projectile weapons to go in, shoot, and just escape very easily, perhaps even causing multiple skirmishes rather than a pitched battle. And that's a key trait of such archers. But it can include people on foot and people without bows. For example, the Roman velites, whatever you want to call them, but the sorts of people who used large shields, javelins, and possibly things like slings as well, would go in and, guess what, shoot the enemy and retract out again. So that's the skirmishing type of archers. And then the second type of archers would be people who I call the fighting archers. Now in this case, they are expected to stand their ground. They're would typically wear armour, although not mandatorily. They would often have armaments so that they can defend themselves, and presumably, though it's hard to find any sources that confirm or deny this, I think probably would have been trained in close combat either privately or as part of military training as well. A famous example of this would be the English archers. Now I actually have one very telling source which I've got information from here. This was from one of the chronicles, which was reporting about the Battle of Agincourt, which, to those of you who don't know, was a battle that happened between the English and the French in 1415, and the English king was King Henry V, and it was a very famous battle where the English longbowmen had won a victory over the French. But of course, that's too vague, and it could mean that they were more skirmishing archers or that they were more close combat oriented. This is where we need to get into nitty gritty. So I've got a little part here that I've got from a quote, and I'll have some bits up on the screen which will show you the full sort of context, which is the original source but translated into modern English. And essentially, to put it into context up to this point, the archers had been doing what they do best, shooting, and it had gotten to the point where the cavalry in the French army had gotten into disarray because they were dying, they were quite wounded, and panic was starting to set in. And then we get up to this point. So it quotes here, "The English took instant advantage of the disorder in the van division," van division meaning the vanguard of the French army, "and, throwing down their bows, fought lustily with swords, hatchets, mallets and billhooks, slaying all before them." Now this is really interesting because it tells quite a few different things. Firstly, there wasn't any reluctance. It shows that they were, it says they fought lustily. They took instant advantage. They are not people who were thinking, wait, Captain, you want us to do close combat? But we shoot people, what's going on? They immediately sprung into action and took advantage, so they were clearly prepared and eager for the idea. So that doesn't suggest that they were people who were just, armed like peasants and didn't expect to survive the encounter at all. And it mentions, of course, it shows that they perhaps weren't the best armed, because it mentions they fought lustily with swords, and it says hatchets. Now, that could mean things like, camping sort of hatchets and tools, or it could actually mean fighting axes, purpose-built. Same sort of thing of mallets, and billhooks, again, could be fighting, purpose-built weapons or more tools. But it shows that they had those prepared and ready and were expecting close combat. And it also mentions, of course, they just immediately took advantage and were slaying all before them. Now, if you had French knights, men-at-arms and archers and people who were prepared for close combat, if it's saying here that they were slaying all before them, even if it might have exaggerated and it was just, an advantage, a victory going towards the English, it clearly shows that they were doing well. So that again supports my theory that they were prepared and ready for close combat. So that's that. And you can see from artwork, you can see that certain types of archers and people using projectile weapons were lightly armoured, were expected to move around fast. Again, people like the Mongols on horses to add even more portability. But you've also got, artwork depicting people like the English wearing heavy armour and using decent weapons. So that demonstrates the contrast between what I call skirmishing archers and what I call fighting archers. So again, this isn't something that's ever been explicitly stated before, but I put this theory forward ready for debunking or whatever you guys think. Tell me in the comments below. And yeah, basically I think that there is that specific contrast, and yeah, you can have archers and other people with projectile weapons sort of not on one extreme or the other, but maybe somewhere in the middle. You can have that as well. I'm not saying they have to be mutually exclusive, but it's that general idea that I think there are some archers who were purpose-built to be portable and just shoot, while there are other archers who are designed to stand their ground. And of course this can have different purposes. For example, the fighting archers would have very good purpose in sieges, for example, whereas skirmishing archers could indeed wear down an enemy in what's called guerrilla warfare. So, for example, you can have people in areas like before the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, there was a lot of sort of skirmishes and things going on trying to wear down the Roman armies. Archers who were lightly armed and armoured could be very good for that. Again, it doesn't state explicitly, but those are examples where such types of troops have their purpose. So I hope that was interesting and gave a bit of food for thought, and I hope to see you in the next video. Ta-ra for now.